So today I'm going to be talking about the GoPro Max 2. But before I get into that, here's a compilation of shots showing what this camera can do. Now, the Max 2 has been highly anticipated. I did predict that it was going to use the GP3 processor. I was completely wrong on that, but I was correct that there was no announcement for the Hero 14 this year because this camera is taking all the limelight. Now, that's not really a bad thing as far as I'm concerned. I think the yearly upgrade cycle is a bit too much, and the move back to a bi-yearly cycle or even longer will give GoPro a bit more opportunity to make sure that the Hero 14 is that much better a camera. Now, despite the fact that the Max 2 uses the GP2 processor, it does surprisingly well. The other thing that surprised me are the gains that GoPro has made in terms of battery efficiency and duration, but we'll get into that a bit later. Now, before I get into the details of this camera, I just want to ask that you watch to the end of this video. It is all that YouTube cares about these days, and if you can give me a like and subscribe if you like this content, then that would be very much appreciated too. Now, I really like the design of the Max 2. Something that GoPro understands is what adventure sports athletes need from a camera. And the Max 2, it's slightly shorter. It's about 1 centimetre shorter in height than the DJI Osmo 360. It's slightly wider, but the height matters. And that's because this will be often mounted on a helmet or body mounted for POV shots. Now, the Osmo 360 is better than the Insta360 X5 in this regard. The X5 has got a tall, slim form factor. You can see just how much taller it is here, which, you know, doesn't really make it very well suited to helmet mounting. Now, with a bracket, you can mount the X5 horizontally, but it's still quite a wide camera, and you still notice it on your helmet. The Max 2 has another advantage in that although you can use a magnetic clip mount with it, you don't have to. It has the extendable fingers on the bottom, or a 1/4 screw mount if you want to mount it onto a selfie stick. But these retractable fingers are important because the Osmo 360 has to have a magnetic clip mount in order to attach it to any kind of mount. And what that means is that once the Osmo 360 is mounted on a helmet, it's around 2 centimetres taller than the Max 2. That makes quite a lot of difference in terms of how the weight feels on your helmet. It lifts up, it gives the helmet a higher centre of gravity, and you do notice that. The other thing that sets the Max 2 apart from the Osmo 360, and something that Insta360 embraced, was the idea of user replaceable lenses. Now, with the Insta360 camera, you can replace lenses in the field. It's not really recommended. Insta360 gives very specific humidity requirements for the environment you're in when you do this swap over, and you also have to perform a calibration after you've installed the replacement lenses. The Max 2, completely different story. You just undo the lens, put a new one on, and it's done within seconds. And you can carry a few of these in your pocket if you think you're going to risk damaging these lenses. I have to say that generally I have found these lenses pretty indestructible. You might have seen DC Raymaker's video where Ray smashes it on the table and there's not a scratch on it. I haven't quite gone that far, but I have accidentally dropped it onto a gravel car park and there wasn't a mark on the lens. The only time I did cause a scratch on the lens was when it met Welsh granite rock. I had the camera mounted to the front of my boat to try and do an unusual shot. I managed to keep it away from damage the entire run down the river until I got to the end. The mount had flopped down a bit lower than when I started, and as I was getting out, it scraped along a rock. But they were only minor scratches. I replaced the lens regardless. I don't know if you would have been able to see the scratches in shot, but I replaced it quickly and easily. What I've been finding when I'm using this camera is that I'm not so concerned about it getting damaged or taking hits, and that's something that I can't really say for any other 360 camera, and that includes the X5, because as I say, even though the X5's lenses are user replaceable, there are specific requirements for the environment in which you do that replacement, which means it is not as easy to just, go to the side of the river in my case, or if you're on a mountain bike, just stop at the side of your trail and just clip a new lens on. So I've got to give GoPro top marks for that, not only for the toughness of the lens overall, but just the speed at which you can swap them over. And as I say, the form factor on this is very well suited to adventure sports. Now, from a technical perspective, the Max 2 records at what GoPro calls true 8K. It's done comparisons with rival cameras, and when you create a 360 image, you have a bit of an overlap at the edge, which is used for the merging of the two 360 images together. What GoPro is claiming is that once the image is merged, it is a true 8K image. So it's around 25% more usable resolution in the final image than with rival cameras, and that makes a difference when it comes to your editing and your reframing of the image for the final output. While I've been using this camera, I have to say I have been very impressed with the image that it puts out. 360 cameras have come a long way since they were first introduced on a consumer level, but this is one of the first I can really truly say that the reframed 4K image is pretty much as good as you'd get from a standard non-360 action camera, to the point at which I could conceive using this as a replacement for the Hero 13. The only caveat to that is that 360 cameras, while they have advanced and the resolutions have increased, the frame rates haven't quite gone up in the same way. It probably won't be long before we will see much higher frame rates at higher resolutions on these cameras. But for now, they've got a little bit of maturing to go. The Osmo 360 is currently the only one that can record 8K at up to 50 frames per second. With the Max 2, you're limited to a maximum of 30 frames per second at the full 8K resolution. You can drop it down to 5.6K or 4K and get higher frame rates. So in 4K, you can get 90 frames per second, and that means that your reframed image is around 1080p. Now, okay, that is a limitation, but it does mean you can get some good slow motion with this camera. Yeah, and once you've reframed the image, it's not really that much of a stretch to go and upconvert it using software like Topaz or even the built-in upscaling abilities of DaVinci Resolve. They do a very good job. So you can get a pretty good looking output at higher resolutions if you utilize those methods. But obviously further down the road, we're going to see 360 cameras get higher and higher frame rates anyway. And by then, maybe the traditional action camera might have gone the way of the Dodo. Who knows? One of the other areas in which the Max 2 is an improvement over its rivals is when it comes to bit rate. The camera can be set to either a low or a high bit rate. High bit rate in its standard configuration, it's currently at around 120 megabits per second. My understanding is that GoPro is going to release a firmware update which increases its base bit rate, I think, to 200 megabits per second. With the Labs firmware, which is the other unique feature of GoPro's, you can set the bit rate to around 300 megabits per second, and it's totally reliable. I've been using this camera using that setting, and I haven't had any drop frames, I haven't had any stop recordings. You do need a good quality SD card, of course, but it can be done reliably, and if you want the highest quality output, you can do that with this camera. I keep banging on about Labs, but for me, it's an essential thing to install on your GoPro if you want to get the very best from it. There are so many unique things that you can do with it, and the control you have over the image and the settings of the camera is just completely unparalleled across the action camera world. It's just not available on any other system. So if you want the absolute maximum image quality, then the Max 2 is certainly a camera you should be looking at, particularly if you want to be mixing it with other cameras. And that goes hand in hand with the GP log function on the camera. Obviously, GoPro has 10-bit recording on its cameras, and the Max 2 is no exception. You have 10-bit recording on the Osmo 360, but as I mentioned in my review of that, I do find that its kind of tone mapping and HDR image processing does create some artifacts, and I find that the Osmo 360, even when you lower the sharpness down to a minimum, it still looks a bit overly digital and a bit overly sharp, whereas the GoPro, when you set the sharpness down to a minimum, you get this lovely, creamy, smooth looking image. You have full control over that sharpening in post to bring it back up a bit more. For me, the GoPros in the action camera world have always produced the best overall image, most pleasing image, particularly if you use the log function. That's not to say that the other cameras produce a bad image. I'm not saying that at all, but there's just something about the GoPro image that I like best of all. The Insta360, it produces a good image in the standard color profile. I find the iLog a little bit odd and difficult to grade. And of course, the Insta360 doesn't offer a 10-bit recording. And for me, if you're going to include a log function, you're admitting that your users are going to want to grade the footage. And if they're going to want to grade the footage, they're going to be wanting a 10-bit color with that log profile. So at the moment, if you want the highest quality image and you want the most control over that image and the best grading ability, then the Max 2 is the camera where it's at currently. In terms of battery life, the Max 2 is not the best performer out of all of these cameras. GoPro has what it calls all-day battery life on it. It's not. You'll get at full resolution up to 30p, 8K. You'll get just over an hour out of it, which isn't bad considering that this is using the GP2 processor and, well, given the amount of processing that it's doing overall. It's a new battery system, and I think if you are prudent with your filming and you had 2 batteries, you could probably go most of the day. If you're doing a lot of filming, I would say get at least 3 batteries to be on the safe side. You know, overall, it's not too bad given what it's actually doing, but it's not the best performer out of all these cameras. You know, the Osmo 360, I got about an hour and 37 out of it, and I still had 20% left, and the Insta360 X5 got about an hour and a half at 8K 30. Obviously, if you lower the resolution, the battery life goes up a bit, but if battery life is the most important thing to you, then the Max 2 isn't the best performer out of the current batch of cameras. Now, audio is an area where the Max 2 in some respects is very good, but in some respects isn't quite so good. The onboard recording, it has 6 mics on it, and they do a pretty good job of filtering out environmental sounds. So this is a test of the Max 2 with its own internal microphones. A bit of a blustery day, a bit of a breeze about, so we'll see how well those microphones do with the wind noise on a walk and talk like this. You know, and you're also looking at the ability to capture spatial audio all around you within the 360 sphere. The area on which it falls down is when it comes to wireless audio. Both Insta360 and DJI have their own wireless mic systems. I'm using the DJI Mic 3 to record this video. These microphones connect seamlessly with their respective cameras. Now, I have connected the DJI Mic 3 to the Max 2. It will work with it over Bluetooth audio. That is a plus point. And to be honest, the quality isn't too bad. It actually sounds pretty good, but bear in mind that Bluetooth audio is still only at 16 kilohertz. So this is the DJI Mic 3 connected to the Max 2. And they've actually been disconnected from each other for a while. I was expecting to have to reconnect them, but they connected together just fine, nice and quick. As you can hear, the audio quality is pretty good, but obviously it's not as good as you'd get if you used the Mic 3 connected directly to a DJI camera system, and that's one reason why I think it's time for GoPro to develop its own mic system for its own cameras. The quality is pretty good. It's better than I was expecting. It's certainly usable, but if you are the kind of person who's going to be using a 360 camera for vlogging, then the Max 2 might not be the best option. You can do onboard recording at 32-bit float resolution with the DJI microphones, which does mean that you can record that audio separately at the same time and then sort of connect it up afterwards in post. So you do have the option of recording extremely high quality audio with the Max 2 if you use one of these systems. But if you don't want to go through that hassle and you want to record directly to the camera, then maybe one of the other options will be better suited to your use case. I've long felt that GoPro should develop its own wireless microphone system for its cameras, making a fully weatherproof system, maybe even fully waterproof. I know that the Bluetooth frequencies don't work underwater, I know that, but if you have onboard recording as well that can automatically detect when that signal is lost and reconnect the backed up audio within the app or whatever, then that would be a really great feature, I think, to have, and it would put GoPro on a par with the other manufacturers. I think such a microphone system would be a pretty good seller for GoPro. I think much more than the gimbal that they've just released. I'm not entirely sure why GoPro developed that rather than something like a microphone system for its cameras. I think a microphone system would be a very good option for GoPro to develop, and I think would be a pretty good seller, but that's just me, that's just my opinion. Now, another area I'm slightly disappointed with the Max 2 is when it comes to charging. There is still no fast charging on this camera. In 2025, there isn't really an excuse not to have a fast charging system on a camera. The Osmo and the X5, I can charge to with 80% capacity within 15 to 20 minutes. You know, you're talking nearly 2 hours or so to charge this to full capacity. I don't know whether that's somehow a limitation of the GP2. I don't know whether that handles power as well, but it's a bit silly in 2025 not to have some sort of fast charge system on it. I quite often find myself wanting to go out and use these cameras and I've forgotten to charge them, and being able to charge to the majority of the capacity within 15 minutes or so, it's really useful. It's a feature I use, and yeah, GoPro, come on. If fast charging isn't on the Hero 14, then something is very, very wrong. So how do I think the Max 2 fits amongst these cameras? Well, I've really enjoyed using the Max 2. Okay, it doesn't have some of the fancy features such as the low light modes that you get on its rivals. I think GoPro, although it says it focuses much more on filming in good light, I think probably does need to have at least a think about putting some sort of low light mode on its cameras. The Osmo 360 with its 1-inch sensors performs pretty well in lower light even without the specific super night mode switched on. Low light can encompass many different scenarios. It doesn't always mean walking through a city at night. It can mean taking your mountain bike from bright sunshine into a very deep forest canopy. I've been in situations on my bike where it's gone incredibly dark as a result, and that's where low light performance comes in. It can also come in kayaking. You can be in bright sunshine while you're kayaking out in the open, and then you'll go into some sort of canyon and it can be pretty dark in there, particularly in winter. So low light is an area I think GoPro does need to put some more thought on it. I don't think it's a complete deal breaker because the general image quality on this in most lighting conditions is extremely good. I really like the quality of it, but it is something GoPro does need to think about for the future. But overall, I think that if you are somebody who is going to use and abuse your 360 camera, the Max 2 is a pretty good choice. You know, I'm for adventure sports users, for people who are outdoors. You know, these cameras can get damaged just taking them out of a rucksack. You know, so the Max 2 is designed to take some punishment, and I've seen firsthand how tough these lenses are, and the ease of replacing them just puts your mind so much more at rest. I love the fact that it mounts on a helmet without me really noticing it because of its lower profile than its rivals, and I love the sublime POV that you can get from it. 360 cameras are not just for looking around everywhere and reframing afterwards. For POV, they're amazing because you have so much real estate available that you can create an ultra-wide POV shot, and you've got the room to do the distortion correction as well, so you can get rid of the fisheye effect. I know a lot of demos you see of 360 images, they're very fisheye. I don't like that at all. I think the fact that you can distortion correct these images and have the freedom to reframe while still keeping a very wide immersive POV is one of the most fantastic things about any 360 camera. But the fact that this mounts so nicely on a helmet is a major advantage for me. As you saw in the intro, I did some footage where I was able to pan around even when I'm doing the POV footage, so you can transform your bog standard POV into something a bit more dynamic. I can mount this on the front of my boat and make it look like a drone is flying in front of the boat, and I don't have to worry so much about these lenses getting damaged. So certainly if you're someone who wants to put your camera in riskier situations, then this camera is a very good choice. So to conclude, if you're much more into vlogging and more sedate activities, then maybe one of the other options like the Osmo or the X5 might be a better choice because of the audio options on those cameras. But as I said earlier, the audio capabilities of this and the lack of a higher quality wireless audio isn't a deal breaker, because you can utilize onboard recording on the newer mics. But I think in terms of peace of mind, certainly for adventure sports users, then the Max 2 gives you one of the highest quality images on the market, the most controllable image on the market, the most gradable image on the market, and also possibly the strongest lenses on the market too. Certainly when you combine that with the convenience of being able to swap them out very quickly in the field. So while the Max 2 on paper might not have as fancy a specification as some of the others, or the same number of fancy different modes on it, I was quite surprised by this. I've enjoyed using it. And yes, I do think that this is a very solid contender on the 360 action camera market, and one that you should put some thought into if you're thinking of getting one of these cameras.